It's every Red Raiders favorite podcast. This is the Tech Talk Podcast from Double T 97.3.
Hey, good afternoon. It's Tech Talk on Double T 97.3 and Double T97.3.com with Dr. Mike Gustafson and Clint Scott. I'm Aaron Dickens. We were joining you today from the First United Bank studio. We are with you until 6 o'clock. We'll have the Cowboys Hour coming up for you at that time. And, Gus, this is normally I spend hours and hours preparing for these programs. Right?
Today's kind of prepared.
Wake up bright and early. I get a fresh notebook, get a cup of coffee, sit at my desk, and then I don't really, stand up until 11, 12 o'clock.
Sure. I know the feeling. Look at this binder.
But this is one of those days where I could have done this show at 7 a.m.
Yep.
This is going to be one of the easiest shows we have to do this whole year because there's so much to talk about.
Yeah,
and
no doubt.
Even though we have 3 hours to do it, I don't think that we will have enough time.
And it's all good news, too. It's not just so much to talk about because we're all ranting and raving.
Let's just get to it. Red Raiders beat the Oklahoma Sooners on Saturday in overtime, 51-48 the final. It was very, very nip and tuck. It was back and forth in the second half. You trailed by 18 points at one point with about 3 minutes to go in the first half. It did not start out great. But you win the game. You finished 7-5 in the regular season. You finished with your first winning Big 12 record since 2009. You beat Oklahoma for the first time since 2011. You beat them in Lubbock for the first time since 2009. And you sweep Texas and Oklahoma for the first time in program history, and I believe just the 14th time in Big 12 history.
Nice. Didn't know that last part. Yeah, I knew just so much good about that, and not all 7 and 4. I would call back in the old days we'd call this 7 and 4, but in the old 11 game seasons, but 7 and 5 plus a bowl game. This one feels different. For a lot of reasons. I mean, expectations coming in were in the 5 to 6 game range. We know that. I mean, that was a sort of a Vegas type pick. But, the way the standings shook out, I mean, you and I were on the air as the Oklahoma State loss at home was unfolding. And, it paved the way for the Red Raiders to finish 4th. And which probably sets them up for a higher shot in the pecking order. They may have played their way out of the Texas, the bowls that reside in the state of Texas, which is okay, but at least they played their way up. But think about it's so I'm saying this 7 and 5 feels pretty good. Put it up there with schedule difficulty. It lands differently than that 6 wins last year did. Even if you lose the other day, it lands differently than last year's 6 wins because there was no.
I don't think you have to apologize at all for being super excited about this 7 and 5 because not all 7 and 5s are equal.
Right, that's exactly where I'm going with this.
And think back to 2006 when you lose, to TCU in Fort Worth before they were kind of what they turned into. You lose to a Colorado team that had been, I think, 0-6 in the Big 12, 0-6 overall before that game. You throw back-to-back pick sixes against Missouri. You spit the bid at home against Texas. I mean, so many kind of woulda, coulda, shouldas, near misses, and it's very unfulfilling. The Insight Bowl made that season.
Right, and the win at A&M on the last play. Yeah. Right there, that throw.
That was the only kind of highlight.
Right, you're right.
And then in 2012 and 2013, you race off to great starts. You were 7-0 in 2013. I think you were 6-2 in 2012. In both instances, you had climbed into the top 15 of the poll. Right? I mean, you were up there, and then you just totally collapsed down the stretch. 2015, you have a listless performance against a Mountaineer team that had been 0-4 in Big 12 play, 31-26, a loss in Morgantown. You blow a fourth quarter lead against Oklahoma State, end up losing by 17, which is hard to imagine. Yeah. That's not what happened here. I challenge anybody to go back and look and say, well, no, they really should have won that game, right? Or they really blew it there. I feel like, maybe someone on this team or someone's on this team will develop into future NFL Hall of Famers, and we'll look back and go, man, how could you only win 7 games with a future
Sure.
Hall of Famer, Donovan Smith and, Taj Brooks. But
Feels like our
absent that-
best shot at that is the defensive end.
Yeah.
It's Tyree Wilson. That's our best shot.
Absent that, right? Where's the regret here?
Mm-hmm.
Where's the missed opportunity? Where's the, man, you guys really blew it there?
Yeah, I'm with you.
I want to give this a hug. I want to give this 7-5 a big hug.
Well, and then couch it and couch that 7-5 and 6 wins, 6-1 at home, wins over. I mean, really,
Give it to me, Gus. Give it to me.
I know
Give it to me all.
all of the signature wins you could have wanted, maybe minus the Baylor game, and really that was the one game that got away from this team, and not that it was the win was in our grasp, but just the one game where it was like, gut your tail kick.
Sure.
Let's say it for what it was.
Yeah.
With the barn full, with an evening kick, with Mahomes and all of that, and able to be resilient and come back and be competitive shortly thereafter and get on a roll here down the stretch. And think about just the last 2 weeks. I mean, in terms of style, because Iowa State, to their credit, well, not to their credit, but to their credit that they were this good defensively.
Although it didn't seem like
no,
that
it
way
did
on
not.
Saturday.
They got behind
Holy
early.
smokes.
And it got behind early, and it's kind of what I thought would happen. Not that I'm saying, yes, I predicted that, but them playing from behind in that game, in that environment, just didn't feel like it was going to be a winning formula, nor was it. But they're very comfortable playing 14-10 games, whether they like it or not. They've played a ton of those type games. Tech won one of those games on the road in horrendously cold weather and all those things. So you won a very defense first field position. Had to make 2 really big touchdown drives, one early, one late to win that game. And goal line stands and all of the things that went into that win. And then fast forward 7 days and it's a shootout by every definition, especially down the stretch. And certainly not a day in which the defense played great, but the defense got stops when it had to, especially right at the end, much like the Texas game, getting a stop in overtime, holding them to 3, and then they missed the field goal, which was a break. But, you talk about rising up at just the right time there. I just the fact that they won a defensive game and then a shootout 7 days apart also tells us something about the competitiveness of this group.
More Tech Talk next on Double T 97.3.
The podcast put together with Red Raider fans in mind. This is the Tech Talk Podcast from Double T 97.3.
Hey, it's the Juice on Double T 97.3 and Double T973.com with Gus and Clint. I'm Aaron. These headlines brought to you by our very good friends at Specs Wine, Spirits, and Finer Foods. Hugh Freeze has agreed to a deal to become Auburn's next head football coach. An official announcement expected later today. Ross Dellinger was the first to report this. Now, virtually every major outlet is confirming this report as well. Deion Sanders said today that a report stating that Colorado had offered him its head coaching job is true, and he has received interest from other schools. This occurred during a teleconference for the Southwestern Athletic Conference championship game participants. Cade McNamara, Michigan quarterback, has entered the transfer portal as a graduate transfer. Played in 4 of 10 games in 2020. Last year, he led the Wolverines to their first Big Ten championship under Jim Harbaugh and a berth in the college football playoff. He lost his job to J.J. McCarthy this season. You too can join the program. We'd love to hear from you today. Let us know what you think on the Yates Flooring Center chat line at doublet973.com. We get this on the chat line from Nick. Has anyone checked in on Sooner in Lubbock? He might not be okay. I hope that he is. This is probably were I him, I might not listen to this show today. Certainly understand that. There will be no dunking. I thoroughly appreciate their contribution to the show. Longtime frequent listener / texter. This and the chat line is such a solid season, so much to build on. Hey, Aaron and Gus, what is your prediction on a bowl? It sure seems like, Gus, you're more or less locked into the Cheez-It Bowl in Orlando.
Yep. Which is an ACC versus an ACC
Florida
team.
State, North Carolina, maybe an outside shot at Clemson. But that seems like almost like write it down in pen.
Yeah. And because I don't even know how much of that would be affected by were TCU to lose this weekend. Would that kick us down an entire slot? I mean, is all of these bowl projections I think are based on TCU winning this weekend?
Yeah, I think the Big 12 seems fairly safe, in that they'll get 2 teams into the big bowls. Right.
Got it.
Into the New Year's Six.
And there's the kicker. There's either one in the playoff and one in the New Year's Six, or 2 in the New Year's Six.
I think that seems like that seems to be kind of the consensus.
Okay. No, that makes, and then that's what keeps that thing from fluctuating and bouncing from up a slot or down a slot. Which there have been years in which that was the case. That you go, well, if so and so wins, then we'll be in the 3rd bowl. If so and so wins, we'll be in the 4th bowl or whatever. And it doesn't feel like that's a concern. What do we end up this year? We ended up with how many bowl eligible?
8.
We end up with 2, 4, 6, 8. Yeah.
Yeah, everyone but Iowa State and West Virginia.
Which is dang good.
It is good.
And West Virginia at 5 and 7 is hoping for a miracle.
That seems unlikely.
I think so too.
I think Rice is first in line, and
based on APR,
and they'll get in. Yeah. I think that's true. I think West Virginia has a chance, but they would need some help. Buffalo still has a game, I think. New Mexico State has filed for a waiver because they had a game that was canceled or postponed. So still some maneuvering, but as it stands right now, you have 8 teams going to the postseason.
You mentioned Rice, their head coach, one of the many being considered at Stanford, or the name being floated at Stanford. His name is Bloomgren.
That is Mike Bloomgren.
Yeah, and the reason, there's a connection there. He was on Shaugh's staff back in 10 years ago.
That's a tough job.
I know. I completely agree. That's another topic for another day. Tom Herman's name was also on that list, and among others. I mean,
like if I'm Cincinnati, right, and suddenly looking for a new head football coach with Luke Fickell going to Cincinnati, to Wisconsin.
Yep.
I mean, Tom Herman makes some sense. He's coached in Ohio before. He knows the Big 12 landscape.
True. Good point.
I'm rooting for a Jim Leonhard trade.
Why?
I just think that I feel like if I was Leonhard, and it seemed like he had a lot of backing there, I get why you would go with Fickell from the ultimate decider's point. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
If I was Jim Leonhard, I would feel a little skewed in that situation and a little upset. And if you got the opportunity, why not go take the head coach job of a Big 12 Power 5 school?
It might be a really logical phone call to make if you're Jim Leonhard and go, hey, saw you have an opening. I mean, and because his interim resume probably didn't hurt him.
No.
It may not. I'm not saying he's a glowing star, but I think he was a guy who was regarded as being a head coach candidate prior to the season.
He's done it some, right? You would be hiring him almost exclusively based on his acumen as a defensive
coordinator, no doubt.
But the fact that he's done it a little bit certainly helps.
Sure.
The Cincinnati job, I think, is very interesting because minimal NIL activity. They just launched their first collective literally last week. If you're Cincinnati, you look at West Virginia and how that program has fared in the Big 12 since joining. You're very similar.
Well, that's a good point.
It's a very kind of Texas, kind of Mid-South centered league. A lot of travel. You're going up a level anyways in terms of competition. I think they will probably have the hardest transition of the 4 newcomers.
That's interesting, and now you're looking at it from the football program perspective, and I think about Cincinnati, and they are, as I think about an athletic department, they feel even more like West Virginia because of very Midwest basketball-centered history, and with some ups and downs in their football program and some of their other sports, I'm sure it'll be. Although you and I were messing around looking at their baseball facility, it's not terrible, but it's not the disaster West Virginia was when they came into this league. But I think I think the Cincinnati job offers a big opportunity for somebody that wants to take it, because I'm going to Cincinnati just in time for them to join a Power 5. Really unique scenario there.
We get this on the Yates Flooring Center chat line from Thomas. Is Shough done, or does he have another year? If so, does he transfer, since he's basically said, I'm the reason why we won, everyone else sucks?
See, yeah. I keep hearing I've listened to that quote now about 10 times. I'm thinking, did I miss something? Because the reporting on this just keeps going and going and going with exaggerations, okay, with a lot of flavors to it. And so I went back today at lunch, sitting there eating in the conference room, just minding my business. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm going back and listening to the post-game comment because I want to hear from the man himself. He didn't say any of that crap. So now, unless this was an interview that I didn't hear, I'm not comfortable with this. By the way, the guy is 7-1 as a starter at Texas Tech. Okay, so
yeah,
I'm defending him right now, and because I keep hearing, he even called out the other 3 quarterbacks. What? Or the other 2 quarterbacks? He did not. He very much did say there's people down this hall. Hey, embrace the opportunity to have a dude playing for us with a chip on the shoulder the size of that helmet.
Yeah, the comment didn't bother me, even on Saturday. Ooh. I was very unbothered. I like having a quarterback with some piss and vinegar.
Yes.
Right? I recall Graham doing double rods to the West Side stands. Right. I'd like to know more about how he feels, right? Just because I'm interested. I don't think that it means that he's like definitely leaving or anything.
Yeah, I think a transfer is the last of the scenarios that involve him. He'd be more likely to go to the NFL, I would think.
More Tech Talk next.
The podcast that finishes your workday in a very Red Raider way. This is the Tech Talk Podcast from Double T 97.3.
Hi, how are you? Good afternoon. Thank you for spending part of your Monday with us as we all kind of get back into our regular routine after a holiday week. Oh, my wife was struggling today. Did not want to get back up.
You mean just the alarm clock kind of stuff?
Yeah, that whole thing.
I didn't know if you meant like she was.
Because, I guess that's the beauty.
Still hung over from Saturday or something. I didn't know where you were going with that.
That's the.
And if she was, God bless her.
That's the beautiful thing about kind of our deal is that, we had a show on Friday.
Yeah.
We were up here on Saturday, so really couldn't get too far out of the routine.
But I did enjoy 4 days of no alarm clock. I'm not going to lie to you.
Amen to that
part. Yeah.
Love to get your thoughts and comments on the Yates Flooring Center chat line at doublet973.com. Somebody asks this question I asked on an earlier show, but would love Tech Talk's take. Which is more likely, Tech keeps all of its quarterbacks for next season, or Tech keeps all of the defensive staff for another year?
I don't know. Of those 2 options, I'd probably go with the defensive staff.
Yeah, I think that's the safe choice here.
Yeah, I think it's a safer choice. Is there a pathway to keeping the 3 quarterbacks? Perhaps. I think the Donovan Smith usage. I think the way he was used the other night is an interesting peek into the future if he hangs around here. If he wants that sort of thing, the ability to play in a slot, perhaps even line up at tight end. Motion out of the backfield, play running back. The way he was used, and then take snaps in almost a wildcat-like fashion. But this guy's played and won a lot of games at quarterback, and so his wildcat's different than just snapping it to a running back, which, by the way, OU was running a little bit of the other night down the stretch after Gabriel got knocked out, I don't say knocked out of the game, but they ran some wildcat, which think about it. That's how they played the whole second half against Texas because the backup situation's so bad. But I don't know. I think, if Donovan sees, and I just don't know the kid well enough. I'm sure it's a family type decision. I don't know the kid well enough to know if he, sees a lifetime of football or the opportunity to play at the next level as a quarterback, then staying here and competing for this job and maybe not winning it.
You would think that his dad would be able to give him a pretty good idea of that, seeing as how he's an NFL coach right now.
Beautiful. Yes. No, that's exactly right. Whereas him in a sort of a hybrid, I don't know, H-back deal with these a really unique skill set and a big body. That's an interesting, it was just interesting to see the way they used him the other day in the backfield at quarterback, motioning out
after the game. Hey, you haven't seen anything yet. Just wait till the bowl game. I think I think you have a much, much, much better chance of keeping your defensive staff together than keeping all three quarterbacks. I think it's like you said. There's a pathway for that to happen.
Right.
That seems unlikely. I think that if you wake up, August 1st next year, and you have two of these three guys on your roster still, whether it's Shough and Morton or Smith and Morton or Smith and Shough, whatever it is, I think you're great. If you just have one, that's not terrible. That's pretty much par for the course. A lot of other programs would kind of be in a similar spot. But, man, you feel pretty vulnerable and hope that Jake Strong, who's the commitment that will sign here in a couple of weeks, hope he's able to kind of spell you if you need any of that.
Boy, it would stack up well for their careers if whether all three of them are here and Smith is running around in this hybrid position and basically we're playing with number one Shough, number two Morton. It feels like to me Morton would be the guy who's most likely to be here for the haul because he's been here the shortest amount of time. He's got deeper ties maybe here in West Texas, but who knows? I'm with you. You keep 2 of 3. That's pretty good, and I prefer to, I don't know. I'd love to find a pathway to keep all 3 of them, but man, that was a lot of fun the other night, and it was a lot of fun to see those things flash the way Donovan Smith on a wheel route. Here's Donovan Smith on a QB keeper down on the goal line. It was just that was fun to watch.
This in the chat line from Thomas the Train. Shough said to some effect, how we were playing, I knew I was going to get my chance. To me, that sounds like since the other 2 have been average, it's just time in my way. Yeah, I mean, I think you can interpret a lot of that a lot of different ways. Because he could have been like, it could have been the royal we. Like, and coaches do this all the time. They use us and we,
right,
when they should be saying I and me. If you watched the game, and maybe you were at the game, and kudos to you for attending that game and sticking around. But on the TV broadcast, I mean, they would cut to Shough when Donovan Smith was in there and made a play. He seemed super bought in, super excited for Smith, super excited for the offense. There were some shots of Morton on the sideline. He was very excited. Right. He was all in. I just don't get the sense, and I'm far from it. I'm just an observer, just like any of you all. I don't get the sense that there's any resentment here or not. That's not the vibe that I got, and that's not really what I took away from Shough's comments. I felt like Shough was basically saying, I feel like I'm the best quarterback on the roster. I wanted to play as much as possible. I was irritated when I wasn't able to play as much as possible, even when I was cleared. And I think bottom line, that's what you want from a competitor. Now, I mean, if you were scripting this out, would you have had Shough kind of like pop off like that? Probably not, But at the end of the day, do I think that there are any kind of lingering effects from this? No,
I don't either. Let's think about the middle part of the season. We lost. You and I were talking about this during the break. We were both at 3 out of 4. We lost 4 out of 5 right there in the middle, and that was a stretch where the one win was West Virginia in a really well played game by Baron Morton. Mm-hmm. Smith was injured. Shough was out. Smith was banged up. I mean, just they don't need to rehash all that. And Morton ran around, on a bum ankle for a while, and also didn't play great against Baylor. All 3 of them played against Baylor. Nobody played good against, and just there was a low point to the season, and losing 4 of 5 during all of that quarterback churn, it feels like it's buried in the past, but that's a big part of the season. That's a big part of the narrative. Not excuse making, because that was also maybe the toughest stretch of the season. It probably includes, at least one of the games you'd love to have back.
You probably don't experience this because you seem very level-headed and even-keeled and emotionally mature.
Oh, wow.
But I know that when I get miffed at, plans suddenly changing or some kind of inconvenience, and I get really frustrated, I'm mad at the situation more than I'm mad at any one person, right?
Yeah.
Now, that might not be how my wife feels. Like
Sure,
if she's
yeah,
she might feel like I'm miffed at her or whatever.
Directing it at her, taking it out on her.
It's the situation,
Sure.
right?
Yep.
I maybe that's what Shough was feeling, right? Maybe he was miffed about the situation more so than he was miffed at McGuire or Kitley or
especially 2 years in a row. I mean,
Yeah.
just miffed at the world for
and you know what,
the injuries and all that.
good for him. He got they were 3-0 right down the stretch. He started all 3 of those games. He played pretty well in all 3.
7-1
as a starter.
7-1 as a starter.
And hopefully 8-1 here in a few weeks.
Yep, 7-0 in games he started and completed, I think, but 7-1 as a starter in his career.
Not bad.
Nope.
More tech talk next.
It's every Red Raiders' favorite podcast. This is the Tech Talk Podcast from Double T 97.3.
Hey there. Good afternoon. Happy Monday. Thank you for spending part of your day with us. Alongside Mike Gustafson and Clint Scott, I'm Aaron Dickens. We're joining you today until 6 o'clock. We'll have the Dallas Cowboys Hour coming up at that time. We'd love to get your thoughts and your comments today on the Yates Flooring Center chat line. You can weigh in at doublet973.com. And all guests appear via the Benchmark hotline. This on the chat line. My concern is losing Blanchard to Rhule in Nebraska. I think that when you have success, and I think it's fair to say that finishing 4th when you're picked 9th, and posting a winning conference record for the first time in this recent history of this program, I think that qualifies as success.
Yeah, sure.
When you have success, people will look to hire your people. We saw that countless times under Mike Leach. We saw it with Chris Beard's staff. We see it across the country. That's just kind of a fact of life. And certainly the Red Raiders recruiting results will have people, will catch folks' attention. Blanchard is a big part of that. There's no doubt. He deserves recognition. He deserves accolades. He deserves, contract bump, all that stuff. I'm not worried about him being poached at Nebraska. I think that you are going to be very competitive there. If you have to kind of fend someone off, I think that there's a comfort level here in Texas that does not exist there in Nebraska, and I think that Blanchard probably better situated to be more successful here than he would be at Nebraska. Now, if they just give him some big old bag, then maybe you can't compete with that. But I would not worry about that. This in the chat line: do you guys really see Morton leaving, as young as he is and as old as Shough is? No,
I don't. I don't.
I would think, as Gus said earlier, he's the least likely. But at the same time, I mean, this time 9 years ago, Gus, I think that's right. If you and I were doing the show together, we would not have thought anything about Baker Mayfield transferring. Like, if somebody would have brought that up to us on the text line, although I think at that time it was the chat line, we would have scoffed and waved it off and dismissed it. So crazy, dumb, stupid, incredible, unfathomable things happen all the time in the sport, right? So, but I don't expect him to leave.
Yeah, and let's be clear. He just finished his freshman year, right? Next year he'll be a sophomore eligibility wise, right? Barron.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because he played a little bit last year, 2021, but it didn't exceed the 4-game threshold or didn't meet. So took some snaps last year, and but played this year as a freshman, would be a sophomore next year.
This in the Yates Flooring Center chat line. After seeing Dylan Gabriel run a wheel route, I never want to see a Tech quarterback run that route. Yeah, I was.
Yeah, the old Philly special. That's what that was. I mean, it was a little Philly special looking thing, right? Wasn't that what that was?
That play is exactly why I felt like once you got into overtime that you were going to win. Now that 42-yard field goal to tie it at the end, I was puckered up. There's no doubt. But their whole offense on Saturday was just let's throw it up deep and have one of our former 5-star receivers make a big play and then score a touchdown. But like if you put them in a box, right? Here's the ball at the 25, I just wasn't. So that possibility is no longer available, right? Because you're dealing with a shortened field. And I think the fact that they ran that play on first down was kind of them conceding that, hey, we don't really. There's no intermediate game here.
Well, I'm sure they'd like to have a do-over on that one, though.
Or on anything. Or on the fake field goal.
I know. Why would you?
I mean, how different is the game if they just kick it?
Right.
There?
Why would you get? I agree. And why would you get bored at handing it to that running back again? Well, this is so boring. Just keep pounding the rock. That's the league's second leading rusher there. Keep handing it to him, but you want to run the Philly special from that far out. I mean, a lot of the Philly special, think about it. The Philly special was run into the end zone. Like he catches it and he steps into the end zone if he's not already there, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why I was like, whoa, they're running that out in the middle of the field, which then sets him up to get clocked. And you know what?
Which makes you kind of run this, like, not give up play on second down, but you're running the Wildcat, and so you kind of you're limiting yourself there. And then it's third and long, and you don't want to be crazy with a third and long play in overtime. You might risk a turnover. And so really that one play and its failure.
Yeah, really set us up, no doubt. Because again, they're no interest in playing whoever their backup quarterback is.
No.
I mean, not yeah.
To your point on Eric Gray, 161 rushing yards, right? His long was just 24. So it wasn't like the K-State game.
Right, a 70-yarder.
Where you felt like, for the most part, you did a really good job against Deuce Vaughn. He just popped like 2 long gainers.
Right.
He was he was popping out medium to long, nice chunk plays, but it wasn't like, hey, an 80-yard touchdown run. So it kind of goes to your point of like they just got bored of it.
They got bored with 2nd and 7. And I get it. Some of those things, who knows? Who really knows where a play was called or where a play was checked into? Now, I would be a little surprised if you checked into that play, but there could have been
won't make that mistake again.
No, I know. Yeah, like, hey, let's take that play away. But that doesn't seem like the kind of thing you would have as a Black 54 Razor, jump into that kind of play. But we might have forced the issue a little bit. We being Texas Tech in that. We might have had the box stuffed on that play or something like that. Who knows? Because so much of what's happening there is you're taking what's given to you. But yeah, it was a weird time to be tricky, as was that field goal. I mean, I'm with you there. It's like they're bored scoring points, and and maybe they felt like, hey, we're at Texas Tech, crazy things happen. We need to go for the gizzard right here. And then when that play didn't work, not that game immediately turned there. I think if the game at a turning point, it might have been like the Rabbits interception. The 24-13 becomes 24-20.
Those last 3 minutes of the first half.
Yeah, I mean yeah. Because the other thing that, and this is no comment. I'm not casting aspersions here. But it was cold, and that's the kind of game, if you're down 24-6, people are going, hey, look at the time, whereas 24-20 with the thing ending on a high note in a way that folks are like, we're not leaving yet. And that crowd hung around for the most part and was, I can't say that they were a factor, but they were very engaged down the stretch.
Well, I mean,
we were very engaged down the stretch.
Given how the game started, being down just 23-24 must have felt like you had, you were blowing them out. I mean, you had all the momentum there.
17-0,
one of the
24-6.
damnedest things I've ever seen. More Tech Talk next.
The podcast that finishes your workday in a very Red Raider way. This is the Tech Talk Podcast from Double T 97.3.
Hey, how are you? Good afternoon. It's Tech Talk on Double T 97.3 and Double T 97.3.com with Gus and Clint. I'm Aaron. We would love to hear from you today on the Yates Flooring Center chat line at Double T 97.3.com. All guests appear via the Benchmark hotline. This on the chat line from T-Money 806. How many Tech or Baylor assistant coaches is Rhule likely to pick off? I sure hope Kirby ponies up some assistant salary increases quickly. I get the concern because of how, in many ways, Matt Rhule is kind of like the North Star for McGuire. But let's put this in a little bit of perspective. Nebraska is committing at least $65 million guaranteed to Matt Rhule, right? They are opening up the war chest for his assistants. He is reportedly hiring the OC at South Carolina for a good chunk of change. So he's poaching an SEC coordinator. Keep that in mind. Because they've worked together. I think that people underestimate Matt Rhule's Rolodex. He's got a big Rolodex. And so I think that I don't know that you've done enough, and I say this having opened the show, giving a gigantic hug to this season, right?
Yep.
I feel better at the end of this season than I have perhaps about any other since perhaps 2008, to be very clear. But I don't know that you've done anything at any single position well enough to warrant a phone call from Matt Rhule about being on his inaugural Nebraska staff. I think they're going for all-stars. I think they're going for splash. They're going for regional fit. And so I just don't think that, I was on his staff at Baylor is like an automatic in now.
Right, especially not after he's done a little tour in the NFL. I mean, as you said, that he's picking from all of the ponds, not just maybe the pond that made sense to him at Baylor when he was coming there from Temple.
Now maybe, and this is where it gets weird, right? There's going to be a lot of movement. I think there are going to be a lot of people in the transfer portal. I think there is going to be a lot of movement in the assistant coaching ranks across the country. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a wild off season. Prepare yourself. Just steel yourself mentally for that. So I don't think that Nebraska is going to try and poach any of your assistants. But could some of your assistants be targets because of ripple effects from that Nebraska staff? Absolutely. Of course. There's no doubt. I mean, there was an article, I think it was The Athletic, that traced all of the ripple effects from Lincoln Riley going from Oklahoma to USC.
Yeah, I remember seeing that.
And it rippled down to like the NAIA level when it was all said and done. So there will be a lot of aftershocks here. But again, if you can go to bed tonight feeling good about not losing any of your guys to Nebraska.
Challenge accepted.
Yeah, there you go.
You're on the record.
This on the Yates Flooring Center chat line from David. Not trying to take anything away from a wonderful year and strong showing from the Raiders, but how much to have another shot at the K-State game. David also adds that his group stayed until the end and still have no voice. It was definitely loud for the amount of people that were left.
Yep, that was fun. That was a good one to hang around to the very, very end because it was a long night. I mean, Dana and I got in the car and I think we had 11 o'clock on there, and we didn't dawdle around after the game. I mean, there was
You didn't rush the field?
No, not from row 52. It's a long way to go for. I would believe my Achilles at about the 22nd row, but no, just sort of meandering out with the crowd and all that, and walking across campus and walking by the Victory Bells, and kind of our normal routine. It was 11 at some point. There was an 11 flashing on my car clock at some point on that drive home. I don't remember if it was when I got in the car or when we got to the house, but it was a late nighter, but it was worth hanging around for the bitter end, because it was we were rewarded for sure.
This in the chat line: AD, please explain your beef with Texas State. Someone adds, yes, Aaron, please explain why you decided to be so mean to Texas State this weekend. I really wasn't mean. There was a discussion because Jake Spavital got let go at Texas State.
Oh, okay.
And there was a discussion of this on the message boards of RedRaidersports.com, and I simply opined that I think that Texas State is the worst FBS job in Texas. I mean, that is true about Texas State. And I think that, listen, you're talking about a group that it's UTEP, Rice, and Texas State. Like, that's the contenders. Those are contenders for the worst job, FBS job in the state. I happen to think it's Texas State. They have terrible facilities. They've got no track record of success at all on the FBS level. There's no kind of local media presence. You're drowned out. So that was my opinion. I'm not going to shout you down if you think UTEP is a worse job or whatever. But yeah,
and we decided Tarleton is Division I now, but they're FCS.
Yeah,
and that was
Houston
the jump.
State.
And that was the jump they've made from to FCS, so that they can play against teams like Texas Tech next September.
Right.
Yep.
And Sam Houston State is transitioning to FBS, so maybe they'll be in contention because Texas State doesn't have an indoor. And there was a story about this over the summer. I mean, they have to bus to, I think, Austin High or maybe Lake Travis,
play indoor to practice inside.
The San Marcos High School, to do practice stuff inside. Their weight room is worse than the weight room at Lake Travis High School. It's just it's in rough shape. Because at least at UTEP, right, they've been to 3 bowl games, I think.
Sure.
4 bowl games in the last decade. Rice is going to be playing in their 4th bowl game in the last decade. They won their division in Conference USA 8 years ago or so. I mean, it's shown that you can win there. And same at UTEP, and just
not a high level, but you said, have enough success to go to a bowl game.
But that all being said, and I wanted to be very clear about this, both on the message board thread and here. I think San Marcos is a nice place. I think Texas State's probably a really fun place to go for college, for your undergrad. So I'm not dunking on. I'd rather go to Texas State myself if I had to do it over again. If I had to choose between the 3, than UTEP or Rice. But I just. If I'm a coach, I would not want to take that job.
See, you've told me that academically you were marginal, but yet you feel like you're well read and all. So I feel like with the right level of maturity, you could handle a Rice education. Yeah, and I think that's a compliment.
You think? I don't. It was never about.
It may be all a rouge.
It was just about effort.
No, that's what I mean.
I quickly realized that I could kind of coast.
Yeah, I got you.
And
that's what I'm saying.
So I did that all the way through college.
But at this point in life, maybe there were to be some effort, and maybe you could have that. I mean, I don't know. Maybe
coasting got me a radio show gig, and hardly
145th market.
Hardly ever having to wear pants. Happily married. I feel like I won, actually.
You've been listening to the Tech Talk Podcast from Double T 97.3. Check out Double T973.com for more from Lubbock Sports Station.